Out of the very limited number of genres I cover on this channel, pop punk is definitely one of them, okay? So sometimes I like pop punk, sometimes I hate pop punk. It all depends on who's doing the pop punk and what kind of mood I'm in. So today, I gotta convince myself if I like this or not. So I've enlisted the help of one Nate the Mate to come on here and to tell me all about why pop punk sucks. And by enlist the help, I mean I'm gonna do a reaction video, which means there will be pausing and stopping and reacting to one of this guy's old videos called Why Pop Punk Sucks. Hey ladies, how's it going? I'm the internet's most ruthless gatekeeper and the planet's most entertaining human being. I am the satirical miracle. I am Dan Frampton. Thank you so much for kicking back with me here today. Do me a solid. Leave a like on this video. It is so important to be leaving likes on this video. Also, comment down below. Leave any sort of random characters, even reply to a person down there. Start a little conversation, that kind of stuff really helps. Because the views are starting to pick up, the watch time is starting to pick up. These videos just need a little bit more engagement to get that extra boost out there into the algorithm. So I know I got some loyalists out there. I know there are some Dan Frampton Army members out there, some secret society members out there, and I need your help, and the help is free, okay? Like, comment, reply, comment, share, okay? I love all that sort of stuff. That will really mean a whole lot, especially on a video like today's video where we're exploring why pop punk sucks. So with all of that out of the way, I hope you got your beverage of choice because it's time to start kicking back. If you're not familiar with kicking back, well maybe this isn't the channel for you, because here we do a whole lot of kicking back. This will be done in reaction video style. There will be a lot of pausing, there will be a lot of stopping and commenting, and adding transformative edits and cuts to this video, okay? I need to make my own content. That's just a disclaimer. Okay, here it is, here it is, here it is now. Turn it up loud, let's do the thing, take a big swig. This is Nate the Mate, okay? He doesn't really run this channel anymore. He has that modern business channel that he does, but I haven't really seen him upload to that either very much recently. So I'm starting to think that Nate the Mate is moving on from his YouTube career, moving on from his little YouTube side hustle that he used to have going, which is too bad, man. The guy was really good at doing the thing. So today, we're gonna watch a Nate the Mate video, Why Pop Punk Sucks. Now this guy's a big pop punk fan. I know that he likes the story so far. No Pressure, Blink-182, big fan of Neck Deep, that kind of thing. He likes modern baseball, Joyce Manor, you know, all the same kinds of bands that I like essentially. All right, let's get plowing. Wonder Years, Starting Line, I forgot to mention those bands. Those are also bands, but not really bands I listen to, so maybe that's why I forgot to list them.
Pop punk. Some call it an oxymoron, some call it the worst genre ever, and many consider it to be their favorite type of music. No matter which of these categories you may fall into, one thing still stands: pop punk's divisiveness. But why? Why does a style of music that's so lighthearted and non-serious in nature garner so much negative attention?
Why does it garner so much negative attention? You already kind of pointed at it. It's the name itself, pop punk. The old punkers were rebelling against pop, so it's sacrilege to put pop and punk together. If you want to make punk, you make punk music. Don't make it poppy, don't make it catchy. Oh, don't worry about the Descendants and Bad Religion. Forget about them. They can be catchy and they can do all that sort of stuff. But if you're Blink-182 or Green Day, no, not that kind of, not that kind of catchy, please.
Pizza, friends, suburban life, and leaving your hometown are all common themes you'll find in a standard pop punk track. Very benign subjects that shouldn't be the source of why this genre is greeted with such ridicule. So is it the instruments, the lyrics, the singing?
All of the absolute above. Most people that I know that don't like pop punk, it's definitely the lyrics and the singing that they make fun of and ridicule the most. Making fun of the drum beats and making fun of the guitars and all that sort of stuff comes second, but it's the lyrics, the themes, and the way that these things are delivered vocally that people just cannot stand.
Today we're going to take a look at why pop punk sucks, whether or not that's a bad thing, and how it can improve.
I like that little title intro that he did there. That was pretty cute.
AllMusic.com coins pop punk as a post-grunge strand of alternative rock that combines power pop melodies and chord changes with speedy punk tempos and loud guitars. Even though the genre hit its commercial pinnacle in
Putting Weezer in the conversation with pop punk or emo always blows my mind. I never considered them that kind of band. Maybe if you look at like that definition, post-grunge, pop rock kind of stuff, then yeah, Weezer does fit that definition. But growing up as somebody that watched MTV, Much Music type stuff, somebody that got into pop punk and punk rock and all that sort of stuff, I didn't consider Weezer lumped into the same group of bands, not by a long shot. I always saw Weezer out there kind of floating on their own little rock, and I didn't really realize what they were and what they were trying to do until later on in life when I realized that there were bands like the Pixies out there and stuff like that.
In 1994, thanks to groups like Weezer and Green Day, pop punk still kind of exists and sort of thrives today. Thanks to groups like The Wonder Years, Neck Deep, and The Story So Far, to name
and sort of thrives today. Yeah, well, in comparison to back then, sort of thrives is definitely putting it lightly. And 4 years ago, I think, no, pop punk has definitely come up a tick since 4 years ago. Not by much, but it definitely has, all thanks to that Machine Gun Kelly and Travis Barker duo.
Name a few. And I mean a few, because there are way more than you might think. So why does pop punk suck? Or better yet, why do people think it sucks? And why is it so often a target for scathing criticism? There's a lot to unpack here, but I think it's only right that we start from the top in order to figure out how we got where we are today.
Alright, so we're doing a deep dive. He's laying it out. We're going to figure out why pop punk sucks. This is going to be an analysis. This is exactly what I need.
Most would agree that the Ramones were one of the first notable bands to combine punk rock with pop sensibility with their 1976 self-titled debut. One most likely wouldn't listen to that album and think to themselves, oh, this is the epitome of pop punk. But here's the thing, just the mere combination of punk and pop music was too much for many fans of punk rock, a line that should not be crossed.
It's really weird to put it like that because I don't know if that lines up historically or whatever, because I don't really see the Ramones as like combining punk and pop melodies. They were evolving just rock and roll and pop rock at the time and ended up doing it so much faster than anybody else because they were basically just playing surf rock at like 200 beats per minute, and that was just unheard of stuff.
Many who listen to punk rock and participate in the culture surrounding it know that you want to be perceived as authentic and genuine as possible. In fact, it might as well be a contest. In other words, you want to be the most punk that you can possibly be. To be outed as a poser is worse than a death sentence in this culture. Never sell out and always do it yourself. Pop music is nearly the end.
Yeah, that's a way of putting it, for sure, Nate the Mate. That is a way that, like, definitely a subsect of the pop punk community, of punk rock, definitely exists in that lane. I'm a very DIY ethics kind of person. Came up in the underground scene, played in so many bands in the underground scene, and really value that kind of grind. Absolutely. And that sort of like competition is definitely out there, more or less in the hardcore community than anything else. If you want to listen to punk rock today or pop punk today or even emo and that kind of stuff, screamo, you're not going to get that same sort of like competition type energy.
Antithesis of this ideology. It's commercially appealing, it's sparkly, bright, and heavily produced. Since pop is and was heavily televised, pop stars had to have a visual presence to accompany their performance, one that directly juxtaposed the gritty, dark aesthetic of punk rock. Considering this, it starts to become more clear as to where much of the initial criticism came from and why it's still present today. But that's really just dipping our toe into the pool of contempt rife within the genre. As aforementioned, when people berate pop punk today, they're usually not referring to bands like the Ramones, but groups that formed many years after them.
Of course they're not talking about the Ramones. People don't really group the Ramones as a pop punk band. If you're going to talk about like the first pop punk band, people normally say that it's the Descendants that took what was going on in punk rock, because when the Ramones were doing it, there wasn't the word punk rock. It hadn't been evolved yet. But by the time bands like The Descendants came out, punk rock was already like coined in the media. Journalists were already calling things hardcore punk rock. There was an obvious evolution in this underground movement. So by the time The Descendants came across and they were like, no, we're gonna do this just as fast as what you're used to, but we're gonna sing about coffee instead.
There's almost always pointed at bands that began gaining traction in the mid to late 80s into the 90s and even present day. Groups such as Green Day, Screeching Weasel, and The Offspring extending all the way to modern groups like The Story So Far, Real Friends, and Neck Deep. These are the bands that embody the sound that leaps into your mind when you hear the word pop punk. High-pitched, nasally voices, eager to leave their hometowns and have music videos that look like this, and of course, this.
It is kind of weird to me to put like Neck Deep and Blink-182 into the same category of bands, but they most certainly are. And then to think like Yellow Card is an emo band, but also a pop punk band, but more so a pop punk band. The line gets really blurry really quickly unless you develop a keen ear and a keen eye for this kind of thing. Where does the emo stop and the pop punk begin? Where does the punk rock end and the pop punk begin? That kind of thing.
Many individuals are quick to point out the fact that many of these groups have weak, unoriginal, and often repetitive instrumentation, as well as boring, uninspired, whiny lyrics.
All of that is kind of true if you're doing boilerplate punk rock in any genre. Punk rock is supposed to be simple, a couple chords, a real easy drum beat, and not even like a vocal line, just somebody shouting whatever over top of it. So at its very foundation, it's crappy, it's not technical, it's what it's supposed to be. And then when you just add whininess on top of it, I can see why a lot of people don't like it. But then those basic elements can be perceived as the worst ever or the best ever. Even fans of the genre will say, bad pop punk is the worst stuff in the world, but good pop punk is the best, most hard-hitting stuff in the world.
Many take umbrage with how repetitive the subject matter tends to be, and to piggyback off that, not only are the subjects repetitive, but the way they're written about and the points of view / perspectives are very similar. The lyrics often read along the lines of, oh, my girlfriend broke up with me, she sucks, and now I'm sad, or my mom and dad just don't get it, and I'm going to let this small inconvenience ruin my entire day. I just wish I could leave this town with all my friends. For instance, the Wonder Years have a whole album called Suburbia and discuss what it's like growing up in the suburbs of Pennsylvania. Newfound Glory has their classic song My Friends Over You, and we can't forget the iconic line on Yellow Card's smash hit Ocean Avenue, we could leave this town and run forever.
All of those are very much tropes, and in the hands of other people they do come across as like trite and boring. But the reason why they work with these bands is because it makes sense to their narrative and it makes sense to everything else that they put out there. They don't come from these big places where they can be rock and roll rock stars. They need to go to a place where they can do it, and it makes sense coming from their perspective. So there is a way for it to be authentic and there is a way for it to be phony. If you're from LA and you're like, hey, I want to leave this town forever, but you're in LA and you stay in LA and you plant your roots in LA and you want to get big in LA, then it's kind of phony baloney just made up for the aesthetic of it all. But if you're from Ohio and you start a pop punk band, yeah, I can believe that you want to leave that place.
And then there's this band called The Story So Far that has written at least a few tracks about girls. To be fair, a lot of it is kind of whiny, and a reasonable person could see why someone would be annoyed by the nasally singing. Or maybe it's the basic lackluster instrumentation that bores you, or maybe it's the lack of perspective and short-sighted lyrics that make you cringe a little bit. None of this is that big of a deal in and of itself, and would just be brushed off as mediocre rock music made for high school kids. But in the last 5 years or so, pop punk has earned itself an infamous reputation thanks to a few key individuals and instances.
Okay, we're going to be getting into that in a little bit.
None of this is that big of a deal in and of itself, and it would just be like lackluster instrumentation that bores you, or maybe it's the none of this is that big of a deal in but in the last 5
Yeah, I can understand why people grow out of pop punk. I've definitely grown out of a lot of it as well. All of these bands are not bands that I currently listen to on high rotation all the time. You might catch me listening to a little bit of No Pressure every now and then, okay? But it's not something that I actually listen to all the time. But over the last couple of years, I only listen to albums that come out this year, and if the album is older than 6 months, I don't even crack into it, you know what I mean? I'm out for the newest and the freshest kind of stuff. And a lot of cool people are doing very cool, interesting things with it that aren't just this boilerplate nonsense.
5 years or so, pop punk has earned itself an infamous reputation thanks to a few key individuals and instances. As a if people didn't already have enough ammunition to hate on this style of music, it got so much worse summer of 2015 and then on. The mantra "defend pop punk" would become more ironic than ever, as the genre would need much defending after this. But
it's true, man. We have between 2015 and 2023. It was a good 8-year period. But now things are starting to pick up. Things are starting to pick up again, I promise. But there was a time when Title Fight was breaking up and there was cracks in the foundation of modern baseball. Oh no, things are really falling apart.
But the kicker is, no reasonable person would want to defend this style of music after these events. Pop punk has earned itself a reputation of being filled with gross, sleazy, creepy dudes that often prey on those who support them the hardest.
Yeah, that is what killed it the most. That is what killed the entire DIY whole section of music fandom or whatever, because hardcore is full of it, emo is full of it, any alternative underground scene is full of this disgusting stuff. But it's not like this scene is the only place where this disgusting stuff takes place. Hollywood is crazy with this sort of stuff. The political sphere is nuts. Are you even kidding me? You can't even compare pop punk to politics and Hollywood when you're talking about this kind of evil kind of nonsense, okay? But it did exist, and it is what absolutely killed it.
The first really big scandal documented in the world of pop punk occurred with Jake McElfresh, aka Front Porch Step, and the floodgates opened from there. He was initially accused of misconduct with an underage fan at some point in 2014, but the situation...
Well, it's where it started with you, Nate the Mate. This stuff has been going on a little bit longer than this situation, but the floodgates definitely did kind of open after this. But I would even say that the floodgates haven't even completely busted wide open on this sort of stuff, on this disgusting problem going on in the underground. I think what's going on with Justin Sane right now might be the thing that will lead to things being busted wide open, and all of these cases will come back up, and there will be a kind of Me Too type movement in rock and roll. But this is hardly the first time that fans of this genre of music heard about this kind of stuff.
The situation blew up to unprecedented heights after Kevin Lyman, Warped Tour founder, allowed him to play on Warped Tour 2015 to the dismay of many festival goers. This scandal was so huge that you could almost get away with saying that it bled into the mainstream, with figures as notable as Paramore's Hayley Williams chiming.
We just reacted to a video of his on his Modern Baseball channel talking about the Warped Tour and Kevin Lyman, and he didn't mention any of this sort of stuff that led into the breakup and the complete dissolving of Warped Tour. It was Kevin Lyman letting these monsters that he knew were bad people onto the Warped Tour.
Many more situations like this would follow, with Neck Deep booting a member. There was that Moose Blood thing in early 2017 that carried all the way to last year, causing the band to go on indefinite hiatus. This Luke Rockets character supposedly did some really gross stuff and got canned from With Confidence. And finally, the Jesse Lacey explosion at the end of 2017 was basically the final nail in the coffin for the genre in terms of public perception.
Yeah, when all these situations were rolling out, it was definitely the end of this sort of thing. And it's crazy to think that Travis Barker and MGK were the ones that kind of shook things up enough to kind of bring it back and make it okay to be pop punk again. Do I have to start giving them flowers? No, there's no way I'm giving Travis Barker and MGK flowers. It's just millionaire pop punk at this point.
Was basically the final nail in the coffin for the genre in terms of public perception. There were probably more events than the ones mentioned, but these are some of the most notable and impactful cases. But
yeah, okay, I'll give you that. There are many, many more cases, and if you were to go through every single one of them, we would be here forever, and we don't have that kind of time.
But it's very important to note that these are the acts of a few individuals.
Exactly. It's not like everybody that does pop punk does this. You know what I mean? It's not like everybody that was on Warped Tour did these kinds of things. Not everybody out there gets accusations, okay? It just so happens that the fans of this stuff lean a little younger, and the makers of this kind of stuff lean a little bit older. So there's gonna be that Venn diagram of creepiness, and people are gonna try to tip their toes, try to see what they can get away with, and then end up doing deplorable, disgusting stuff. But there are some good people, some real gems, some beauts out there, okay? And for these monsters to completely ruin it for everyone else, that's the real crime.
And most of these bands are probably full of really decent, down-to-earth people, and it would be silly to assume that just because someone plays a certain style of music, they're somehow bad. You know what they say, one rotten one spoils the whole batch. Alright, so pop punk sucks, but is that a bad thing? No.
Alright, so pop punk sucks.
In fact, it's a good thing. which I know sounds very absurd to say, but just hear me out on this.
Of course it's a good thing. Pop punk sucking is the only thing.
Whether you're a fan or a musician, you have to start somewhere in terms of the music that you consume/make. And many young people often want music that they consider to be theirs, meaning not that Christian band that your mom loves or your dad's favorite classic rock band, but something that they can discover on their own, something that speaks to them on their level and has a different sound. For this reason, genres like pop punk and metalcore are frequently the beginning of one's musical journey because they're more geared toward the youth, they have lots of energy, and have themes that kids and young adults can identify with.
I do agree with a majority of what he is saying here. Metalcore isn't normally one that people gravitate first to. It's kind of one that they graduate to when they're like, oh, I kind of like this heavier stuff that I'm seeing on the radio. Oh, but there's this other stuff over here. That's kind of your second move or whatever. And people that enjoy the simplicity of pop punk enjoy it because it's like, hey, now I can play the thing that I like a lot. This is very easy. It's 3 chords on a guitar and I just gotta scream about my hometown a little bit. I love this.
This is just the beginning though. You'll slowly branch out into alternative rock, indie rock, rap, pop, hip-hop, you name it. And if you're young and watching this, trust me, I know this sounds crazy because there's no way you could have convinced 16-year-old me that I'd ever enjoy an artist like Lorde or Snoop Dogg. If you're at that point in your life where you only listen to pop punk, embrace it. It's not a bad thing.
I don't know, I'd say it is kind of a bad thing. If you're young and you're just like so into it, I get it. I was kind of there before. You can't pigeonhole yourself because then not only are you getting grouped in and typecast as a thing, but you're closing yourself off to a lot of other stuff as well.
Pop punk can open you up to so many different types of music. Don't let people make fun of you for listening to a style of music that they don't think is up to par. Anyone who does this is either insecure about their own taste or has some other stuff going on. Just ignore them, brush it off, and listen to what you love. We all have different tastes that are constantly developing, growing, and expanding. Today, you love pop punk. Tomorrow, maybe you'll develop a love for freeform jazz. You just never know. And
you won't develop a love for freeform jazz. They'll tell you that much for free.
That's what makes music so fun and engaging. You never know what's going to pull you in and resonate with you. If you love it, listen to it. No one's opinion is more important than your own.
There is no opinion more important than your own. Wrong! Mine! My opinion is more important than everybody's. I'm the most ruthless gatekeeper.
Even though it sucks, and even though that's not a bad thing, you still have to wonder, can pop punk get better? Honestly, yeah, it can. I firmly believe it can.
From 4 years ago, when did this actually come out? Oh, this happened before the world shut down. There's no way that this guy could have predicted what was going to happen.
The answer as to why isn't super complicated or profound, but I believe pop punk can get better just by musicians trying out different things and not being afraid to experiment, which is so much easier said than done in this world of music. Fans
I don't know, dude. Now we have to contend with MGK and Travis Barker, and we gotta worry about Avril Lavigne. So pop punk still really does kind of suck a whole bunch. There are only really a couple outliers out there that are good. The ones that are good are amazing, and everything else,
be really picky and finicky when it comes to this style, and I think that honestly discourages a lot of growth and experimentation.
No, be picky, be finicky. You could even come out here and be fickle, like one thing one day and totally disregard it the next day. That's alright.
Could be happening. You don't want to lose fans, so you just play it safe. I think pop punk has a lot of potential regarding the genres that it can be fused with. There's this artist called Nothing Nowhere who does a great job of combining emo
I hate Nothing Nowhere.
rap and pop punk.
Oh, he does an awful job combining those things.
To effectively produce emo rap for
It doesn't effectively do anything.
Pop punk kids, and they eat it up. It's a really cool sound.
They do eat it up, for sure. And it's not a really cool sound. It sucks!
I think younger people that are in that phase in their life where they only listen to pop punk are craving things like that. For instance, 2 really big bands in the pop punk scene right now are Turnover and Movements.
Both of those bands are brutal.
Bands that aren't even pop punk bands, but either incorporate elements of the genre or have just naturally progressed beyond it and still have bits and pieces of it forever embedded in their sound. If people were just a little more open-minded about change, I think this genre could have the potential to grow and flourish into something really interesting. And that's the thing, don't be inclined to like something just because it's different, but on the same token, don't just immediately write off the New Story So Far record because Parker isn't angry anymore. If you give it a fair shake and you don't like it, that's great, at least you tried. And I honestly believe that little things as simple as that could go such a long way to work towards improvement. The only limits this genre has are the ones that we put on it.
That's so deep. The only limits are the ones that we put on it. If they were to go out there and do something cool, I want them to do something cool, all right? And you are saying something I kind of agree with out here, Nate the Mate. You do need to go into things with an open mind. You do need to go into things with an open heart. Because if you're going there with a predetermined bias, then you've already have your decision made up, and that's not good. That's not a cool thing whatsoever. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to the audience. That's not fair to anybody around you. You got to open your ears and open your eyes and see if it's something that you like. But hey, if it's something that you don't like, that's not something personal to anybody else. Nobody needs to feel offended about somebody's opinion, okay? I'm allowed to like or not like whatever the hell it is that I want to like or not like. If I want to support this one thing, that's cool. If you support this other thing and I hate it, I'm allowed to hate the fact that you support that, but I'm not going to disregard you as a human being and tear you down and come after you for liking a thing. That is ridiculous.
Even though I've been fairly critical of it for most of this video, I'd be the first to raise my hand and say I love pop punk. I always have, and I always will.
I'm very critical to it too. There is a lot of it that is amazing, okay? A lot of it is great. And if I meet somebody out there that tells me that they like pop punk, I just gotta gauge their age and I know what era they're talking about.
At 23, I listen to it and view the culture around it from a very different lens, but still have an appreciation and enjoyment for it. Growing out of music doesn't mean you have to stop listening to it, shun it away, and act like it's the worst thing ever. It's actually the exact opposite. You love it just as much, if not more. It's just the perspective that changes.
Absolutely. It's totally normal and totally okay for people to grow out of things. You notice how 70-year-olds aren't still hippies. They were hippies way back in the day, but they grew out of that sort of thing. It's totally normal to move on from things and then to look back with nostalgia goggles and be like, oh, that was a beautiful time.
Never stop growing, never stop improving, and be passionate in what you do.
But I agree with that. Never stop growing, never stop changing, and never stop being passionate about what you do.
Never forget where you came from and look back upon it fondly, because it got you to where you are today. Thank you for watching.
Very deep, Nate the Mate. Absolutely. Pop punk sucks, and that's okay. I mean, it's so interesting to hear the perspective of pop punk through the lens of somebody that came up at a different time than I did, that comes up through a different generation than I did. Because I was there for Green Day in the early 90s when this thing really blew up. I was there for Blink-182 when Blink-182 took over my entire life and my entire personality and my entire identity, okay? I was there through the whole Warped Tour thing, through it changing into the sad boy pop punk, everything that it did in the 2010s and now evolving into the 2020s. When you're an old head like me, you've been around through it all. So for this Nate the Mate to kind of jump in at the halfway point and have all these opinions that only someone that jumps in at the halfway point would have, I think that that's great, and that's another perspective to throw into the old hat. But he definitely went through a list of monsters here in the middle of his video that ended up being the end of pop punk or whatever. And I'm thinking maybe I need to do a little bit more of a deep dive on each one of those. We'll see. Anyway, I've been Dan Frampton. That's been Mick Foley the cat. He's been hanging out. He's been sleeping the whole time. Thank you so much for watching. I had a really great time making this video. The content just keeps on coming and coming out here. I need to keep on cranking this out. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I need your thumbs ups on this video. I need your comments. I need your shares. Anything that you could possibly do to interact with this video really helps me out a whole lot. I made it a very long video, so hopefully it gets a lot of watch time, get some shares, get some likes, all that juicy engagement that will get this out to more people. On my wrestling channel, the algorithm treats that pretty well, all right? I have less than 1,000 subscribers, and it always pushes it out to even more than 1,000 people. So go check out my wrestling videos if you like wrestling. Okay, my arm hurts right now. I've been waving a long time. I gotta see you later. Bye for now.